Okay, I guess we'll start. Welcome. I see former students. Yay. I see current students. Yay. I see students. Yay. We have a bit of everything. Welcome. For those of you that don't know me, that's going to last about 3 seconds. My name is Ignacio Vijil. I don't expect anybody to be able to say that. So I go by Nacho. Okay, you can call me Nacho. That's not taco, that's not burrito, that's not chimichangas, it's nacho. The right Mexican snack will be fine. I've been teaching at Rutgers since 2010. And I've taught this class and macroeconomics whenever the legendary Dr. Landana decides to send me away. So I've taught that class and this class in Shanghai, Beijing, here in Singapore. I taught it last year, microeconomics, and then I was here in Singapore. I was trying to figure this out 2012 or 2013, but a long time ago. I'm not a full-time professor. I have another job, so I'm in business too, and I consider that to be an advantage. I run operations for a German multinational in medical devices in Spain, and I consider that to be an advantage because that's what I use in my class. So whatever I use in the office, that's what I teach. I have several witnesses here. I'll be asking about the 7 tools in a minute, James and Emilia. I tell you, if I say you 10 years down the line. And today we're going to talk about how we use managerial economic analysis or microeconomics. How can we use it to devise successful selling strategies, okay? So what we're going to do, for those of you, all 25 of you in the room that are thinking of joining the program, what I'm going to do today in an hour, more or less, that's a good 8 hours of teaching, okay? So I'm not going to go into a ton of detail. I'm just going to go through the motions, but don't get scared. Don't think that this is the typical rhythm that we go through. That's not how we roll in the program. So who here is in sales? Raise your hand. Okay, I have news for you. Everybody's in sales. It doesn't matter what you do in the company, you are in sales. You're trying to help what? Very good question, James. We're trying to help one of these 3. This is profit, pious profit, total revenue minus total cost. Is this bringing some memories? Our total revenue is how much money we're bringing in sales. That's fairly clear. And our total cost is how much it's costing us to produce and sell that product or service and whatever the cost associated with it. And our total revenue is as simple as our price times our quantity. I'm selling these widgets for $10 and I'm selling 1,000 of them. What's my revenue? How many MBAs does it take to do 10 times 1,000? It's $10,000, right? That would be our revenue. And this revenue really, when we're talking about revenue, we're talking about something much more important. We're talking about the demand. So you've all heard about supply and demand, right? And we're not going to deal much with the demand today, with the supply, but we're certainly going to talk about the demand. Is this bringing memories for everybody? Yes? You're starting to see the Tai Chi lines that start moving in front of you. That's good news. That's good news. You still have it. You still have it. So anybody, for 5% of the grade, you don't need to take any longer. The demand. When we talk about the demand, what are we talking about? We're talking about the amount of goods or services that consumers are willing to consume, are willing to buy at different prices. Right? When we talk about the demand, we talk about a function where we have our quantity and our prices, and that's our demand function, okay? And we could get into painful level of detail, whether this is a straight line, logarithm, exponential. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole. But this is key to what we do. And why is the demand, why does it point down? Why does it have that slope? Anybody? Exactly, because if nothing else changes, if I sell cheaper, and if I sell more expensive, I'll sell less. If nothing else happens. Anybody remember how we say that in Latin? Ceteris paribus, beautiful. I get chills, they're multiplying, and I'm losing control. So, ceteris paribus, beautiful. If we sell cheaper, we sell more. But that's easy to do. Even I can do that. You put me in any industry, any company selling whatever product or service, and I can sell 50% more than the next guy if you let me give it away, right? But that's not what we want to do. What we want to do is, our objective is, I want to sell more without having to sell it cheaper. That's right? I want to sell more without having to sell it cheaper. So this we consider just moving along this function, right? We're just increasing the quantity that we sold. But this is what we call a demand shifter. And that's our job. In sales, in marketing, our job is to throw a lasso over this function and pull it our way. That's all we have to do. It sounds very simple. It's not that simple. So let's talk a little bit about that demand. What are the determinants? What do you think those factors that determine the demand for our products? And one thing is price, we've talked, is built into the function, and that'll tell you the quality. But the demand itself, what it depends on. Why would I sell more for the same price? Why would I sell more than my competition? Because they know our product. Because we convince them that it's better than the competition. We're talking about tastes and preferences, right? Taste and preferences, we're trying, the sole role of advertising is to try to convince a customer, a potential customer, my product is better than anybody else. Or my product is going to meet an unmet need better than anybody else. And that's key first. That comes first. This is going to solve my problem as a consumer. And then, how much does it cost? If this doesn't meet my need as a consumer, I'm not worried about the price any longer. I'm not in the market for that product, right? Taste and preferences. What else? Quality, very good, right? Okay, so, yeah. Yeah. Let me get a mic that we're going to have moving along. Sorry, Laura, can you just pass it on to Rohit? So, Rohit, you were talking about how some companies, they sell more because
by financing the purchase.
Okay, by financing the purchasing. How about by shipping, even free shipping when we're talking about goods? What are those things? All those things are related goods. So we can influence the prices of related goods. And in a minute, we'll talk about complement and substitute goods. What else? Why is everybody so adamant to selling stuff in China or in India? Is it because of the weather? Is it why?
Huge potential.
Because there's a lot of people there. The number of customers, number of potential customers, right? Number of potential customers. Now, anybody here from the US? Yes, remind me. Jared, Labor Day. What happens in Labor Day? If you want to buy a car, what happens in Labor Day? Labor Day sale. Okay. Well, I lived in New Jersey up till 2 years ago for 12 years. Let me tell you, Jared, what's still going on in the US. Labor Day sales. So you know that come Labor Day, you can buy a car with a huge discount. Because companies are dealerships trying to clear inventory, right? So if you're in the market for a car, would you buy a car 2 weeks before Labor Day? No, because you know if I wait 2 weeks, I'm going to get a huge discount. Those are the consumer expectations about future prices, right? If I know that there's a sale coming along, I'm going to wait. So these are some of the determinants of our demand, right? And we call these demand shifters because if we only manage to change taste of preferences, we'll be able to shift our demand if we convince people to buy ours. The issue here is that the competition is doing the same. So you got to be careful and do things right so you don't find your demand collapsing, right? Maybe you think, maybe you're doing your advertising, you're doing great, you're great marketing campaign. People are just honking on the streets. They know we're here. Prices of related goods. We'll talk about. We've mentioned financing. We've mentioned shipping. We'll see a couple more examples. For example, Kindle, Amazon. They don't do this any longer, but let's talk about the Kindle. How much money does Amazon make, or they made, with every Kindle they sold? 0 to nothing. They won't admit it, and if they're watching, we know who you are, but fact of the matter is 0. Why? What's the rationale there? Why won't they make money with a Kindle? They make money on everything else they sell. They make money on the ebooks, on everything else. That's a platform for you to start spending money on something else. Okay, so we've talked about our revenue, how that's price time quantity. We've talked about our demand, how selling cheaper is fairly easy, but what we really want to do is push our demand out without having to sell cheaper, right? What we need to be careful is the competition is doing, so we don't wake up one day and we see this happening, right? In that case, I'm selling at the same price, and all of a sudden, I'm selling, right? Good. Where are we going with this? Very good question, Emilio. You haven't changed? Very good question. So let's see now. That's my email address, by the way. I have an official Rutgers email address. I have my personal email address. You can reach me in either or even both. If you have questions after, I'll be happy to answer those. Let's talk about that demand function, because not all demands are born equal, unfortunately. Okay? And companies spend a ton of money trying to determine that demand. You'll remember, I'm sure, from your statistics class. I'm not going to try this. I'm not going to test you guys. I see people shivering, getting cold hands. Oh my God, statistics, is it going to go there? How? We can, with real data, these are actual points where when we sold at this price, we sold this much. When we sold at that price, we sold this much. With that data, through something that you well know as multiple regression analysis, you can come to the best approximation of that demand, based on, as you remember, minimizing the square of the errors, blah, blah, blah. All statistical talk to saying, what's the best approximation of my demand? And if you know that, that's very powerful. That's what business intelligence comes in, statistical power in different companies. But let's talk about something called elasticity of demand. And where we're going today with all this is, by the end of today, you're going to have 7 tools. Some of you will remember them by heart, I'm sure. You're going to have the 7 tools, the world-famous 7 tools of natural knowledge, which is this class. And with those 7 tools, any industry, any product, any set, it will help you push this demand out, okay? And it's a list, very powerful. So with great power comes great responsibility. Don't go to the next barbecue and start throwing the 7 tools around. People will abandon you there by the hot dog stand. But with these 7 tools, I urge you, and I would recommend you, that's what I tell all of my students, whenever you're in the situation with the CEO, with the chief marketing officer, with whomever it is, trying to define the strategy, that you just go down that list. And going down that list, you'll find some stuff that applies to you, some stuff that may not be applicable for your company in that particular time, or it may be less applicable in your industry, but they are all useful, okay? So let's talk about elasticity. And you're gonna help me out here, because we're gonna compare two demands. And you're gonna tell me which one you like best. Which demand would you like your product to have? That one or this one? The first one. Why? You drop the price a little bit and you get a great juice for that. Is that good? Okay, let's see that. And conversely, you raise price by a little bit, and you lose a ton of people. So if that's your price, you get that quantity, and that very same price here gets you this quantity, let's say. And now let's drop the price by 1%, whatever that may be. Has a great effect here, right? So that's good. I guess we're gonna see. And here I drop the price a little bit, and I only got a little bit more. That's because in this demand, price is a huge factor of what people are buying from us. They're buying based on value, based on price. I'd rather have this demand. You know why? Because I can raise prices. I can raise, and I'll just a little bit. We call this demand to be fairly elastic. Very good, fairly elastic. And we call this demand to be fairly inelastic. We have two jobs. Before you walked in here, you thought you had no job, you were done for the day. I already gave you one job. You need to pull that demand out, right? You need to shift it towards you. Now you have a second job. You need to try to make your demand inelastic, as inelastic as possible. Okay? How do we do that? How do we, tell me products or brands that price is a factor. Price is always a factor, but not so much. That they raise prices and they don't seem to suffer. So gasoline in India, if price goes up, to a certain extent, okay. Okay. So income is a factor too, when we're talking here. It needs to be within your income, right? We're going to touch upon that in a minute. How about consumer goods? iPhones, Apple. You know what Apple is great at? This. You know how much the new iPhone retails in the US? I can't even say that number. I tried 20 times before getting here in the hotel. I was in front of the mirror, like $1,300 for a phone. I went to the store and I asked them, does it go and pick up the kids from school? Does it take the shirt to the dressing? I mean, I don't understand it. $1,300. And there's people that pay it. Why? So it's quality, of course, but brand loyalty. Brand loyalty. I'm loyal to that brand. It's going to raise prices, that's fine. That's a pricing strategy we're going to see towards the end called price skimming. That's what they're doing with us, which is fine. If you're in the market for that, that's fine. So we've mentioned, I'm going to write them somewhere here, and then we'll go through them. We've mentioned brand loyalty. Yep. Yeah, you have a waiting list. Having a waiting list. We'll talk about that in a minute. You know what it does? Scarcity. Scarcity jumps up prices, right? This is, we only had our demand here, but just for you, James, since you mentioned it, just for you. Don't go telling anybody else. Market prices, as you know, are the result of the supply and the demand. And the same way that we talked that the demand has certain determinants for the supply, one of the determinants, input prices. How many of you are in sales? All of you are in sales. Good. You have two jobs and you already learned something today. This is already, and only the first 15 minutes. So, how many of you have had to write the following letter? Dear valued customer, next year, we're going to raise your prices by X% because of A, B, and C. Those letters are tough to write and to explain to customers. And one of them sometimes is because input prices. You write that letter because you say, listen, I sell this, and it's made out of ink and plastic. Let's just go with that. If ink, and I always recommend this, think of extremes. If 1 gallon of ink went for $1, and then tomorrow 1 gallon of ink goes for $1 million, $1 million, what effect is that going to do to you? So much expensive to produce this, you're going to put less into the market, right? So when we're talking about supply, you have input prices that are something critical. What else? Fixed assets. Talk to me. Fixed cost. Yeah. Yeah. You remember the landana? Yeah. Okay. How about Uncle Sam in the US and any other uncles or aunties around the world? So government, the taxes, the regulations, that's hugely important. Technology. What happens with technology? Fracking. What did fracking do to the oil industry? Fracking, it was a way of now hydraulically pumping sand, correct me James if I'm wrong, into basins with a rock that couldn't be cracked before, and now it is cracked. And now you can access a ton of oil you couldn't before. What that does, that increases your supply, right? There's much more oil. That's what the US has been doing, and that would lower price and more quantity to go around. What Apple does the opposite. You know what? Less supply, let's have a waiting list. Great. Having a waiting list is the best for your product. And have you noticed how all pricing reductions are for a limited time only? They never tell you how long. They never tell you, oh, it's 7 years, don't you worry, you're fine. No, it's for a limited time only, because that's gonna rush you to the store. So you put huge demand with short supply, look what just happened to prices. That's good. That's what they were expecting. So we were talking about, in terms of elasticity, we were talking about brand loyalty. We talked, what did we talk? We said something as technology. No, I'm mixing with the supply, sorry. Brand loyalty. What else? What does it mean that this is inelastic? Let's talk about pharma drugs for a second, okay? I'm diabetic, but let's say I'm diabetic. I need to take that drug, and that's not negotiable. If I don't take it, in 2 days, I'm dead. Do you think that the demand for that drug, branded drug, is fairly inelastic or fairly elastic? It's very inelastic. It doesn't matter how much you're going to charge. If I can afford it, I have to buy it. But then I have a bit of a headache. I was with some alumni yesterday, talking macro, talking micro. I have a bit of a headache. And I go to the pharmacy, and I need ibuprofen. And there's 5 different generic brands of ibuprofen. They're all ibuprofen. That's fairly elastic. To me, price is going to have a huge difference there. $1, 95 cents. I'll take the 95 cents. It's the same thing. I'm just saving 5 cents. So you have brand loyalty. What's the case of the branded drug? We're talking about how many substitutes we have. So we're talking about the number and closeness of substitutes. If there are a lot of substitutes, that's going to make the demand more elastic. How do we make people believe our product is unique? Have you guys purchased bottled water lately in the supermarket? It's amazing, the packaging. Fiji water, you grab it and it's like you are there. I'm in Fiji. No, you're in a supermarket in Singapore and you're just buying water because it's hot and humid. But the packaging, it makes you feel like, oh, wow, it's just water. And now there is, we'll look at this article in class, we'll see it last year too, how the bottled water market in the US now is larger than the soda market. So there's more bottled water sold than Pepsi and Coke and all that stuff all together. There's a craze about it. And every company has to differentiate themselves from the others. And they do it through packaging, through advertising, through this is a pH induced, it's gonna make you the coolest guy in town if you drink this water. Still water. But they're doing that. And you know why they're doing that? Very good question. Because of the type of market that they're in. Can I raise these people? Citizens of the world? Is this bringing back memories? Even for those of you that have never been in my class, is it bringing back memories? Let's talk a little bit about advertising. Some of you will remember this chart, right? Where we have a monopoly here. You guys have not seen this yet. We have oligopoly. We have here something called perfect competition. And here we have something that everybody gets wrong in the exam, which is called monopolistic. Not that I'm going to call this in the exam. Write that down. You remember the wink wink. Monopolistic competition. Monopolistic competition. And the demand of our product here is, we go from to perfectly elastic. So you have to know what's the playing field, because it's not the same if you are the only guy in town that if you have a ton of other people. Anybody from Iowa here? No, from Idaho here? Family in Idaho? No? The Idaho potato. It's a potato, but they've managed to differentiate that potato. People go to a supermarket and it's amazing. There's a potato and there's the Idaho potato. Good for them. How did they do that? They're trying to differentiate, because most of us live in this world. Most of us live in between oligopoly and monopolistic competition. Bear in mind here, you have one supplier. There's one guy in town. And here, there are a lot in perfect competition. So most of us have a lot of competitors. If you are in the auto industry or airlines, you have a bunch. How many? There's mathematical formulas to determine if this is an oligopoly or not, but I usually say if you can call them all in an afternoon, that's an oligopoly. You could potentially sit down and grab the phone call of every car manufacturer in the world and call them in an afternoon. It's an oligopoly. Airlines. So, most of us live in this world, and when we're talking about convincing people that our product is different than the others, we're talking about something called differentiation, right? Here we have high product differentiation, and here we have low. And if we are in monopolistic competition, as most of us are, products aren't that different after all. And you're trying to make that case. You're trying to differentiate this. Okay? And that's our role for advertising and marketing. So we're talking elasticity, brand loyalty, number and closeness of substitutes. Let me ask you a question. Birthday comes along. Wife, husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, I'm going to stop the list right there, children, whatever that may be. How much does it cost, the Scotch tape? The stuff that is used to wrap presents. How much does it cost? And more importantly, who cares, right? Maybe it went up 50% since last year. Maybe it was $1 last year, and this year is $1.50. Did anybody notice? No. Why? Because it's a very small percentage of our income. So there was a huge increase in price there, maybe, and it didn't really affect our purchasing decision. Very inelastic. The percentage of income that the product represents. But if we're going to buy a BMW, and I always say this, once I made the mistake of saying I used BMW in class, and somebody went, excuse me, I drive a certified pre-owned BMW. I said, okay. So if we're driving, if we go to buy a car, and our budget is $50,000, and that's what it used to cost, and now it's gone up 10%, and now it's $55,000, that can bring us, so that demand will be fairly elastic, right? In that case. So brand loyalty, number and closeness of substitutes, percentage of income that the product represents. Anything else you guys can think of? Necessity, right? We mentioned with the necessity. I just need this. Now, some people need the latest iPhone. I know that. I have a boss of mine that will be watching this later, Mitchell. I salute you. Mitchell was what's the definition of an early adopter, which means The latest iWatch was out, he already had it. The latest iPhone, he had it. He's 12-year-old at the time that I was in college. He had better phones than anybody else in the office because it would just cascade down. So he was the definition of I need it. He was also a definition of brand loyalty. His demand was fairly inelastic in that case. He would pay. So all of these things, mother's time horizon, etc., all of these things are going to influence whether your demand is fairly elastic or is fairly inelastic. And remember, we have two jobs. We want to pull the demand out, we're going to shift it out, and we're going to make it as inelastic as possible. Because we're going to sell more without having to sell higher, without having to sell lower. So now we get into the most important thing of today, which is how do we take all this? This is all good. You might be thinking, okay, stop it. You might be thinking this is great, but how do I use it? How do I go to work tomorrow? What am I going to start drawing demands to my boss? It wouldn't be a bad idea, but I'm going to start shifting, doing a sales meeting. I'm going to throw the lesson and start. This is what we need to do, guys. Okay, I told you, a lot of power, a lot of responsibility. Don't become that. What I'm going to give you now is we're going to put all of this together in 7 tools. And those 7 tools, I'm not going to tell you, are former students and current students. Yeah, James just ran away. Here you are. So we're going to use 7 tools. I call them jokingly of nachonomics because that way people remember them, or I would hope. But these are 7, okay? And I recommend you, I'm sure here former students, they have it plastified in a little list in their wallet because you use this. So first one, pricing. Let's talk about pricing for a minute. If we want to sell more, ceteris paribus, we could do one thing as we said. Let's just sell cheaper. It used to be 100, now it's 90. I'm sure you're going to catch some people. But then what? You're going to lower to 80 and then 70? So lowering prices is very easy. Everybody can do it. But once you lower them, it's very difficult. Okay? So that's why you got to be careful with that. What I suggest instead is, what do you want to do with that pricing? What's the objective? And here it could be several things. For example, we were talking about shipping and financing and whatnot. You could have what's called a loss-leading pricing strategy. What does this mean? I'm going to lose money with one because I'm going to make it all with another one. We always use the example of printers and toner, right? Why do companies lower the price of the printer? Why? Because if you sold toner by the gallon, you could be charging $64,000 for a gallon with the prices that you're charging now for a toner. So that's where the margins, right? Loss leading. How about if you want to get into a market, penetration pricing? What if you want to get into a market that you are not in? What do companies typically do? Do they charge a high price to get in? No. You charge a low price because you want to get into the market. Once you're into the market, once you've proved your value to customers and whatnot, then you can start raising your price because then you've proven that you are good, that you are worth it. We mentioned Apple and pricing strategies. We typically do 25. I'm not going to do 25. We don't have time for that. And we go into painful level of detail. Well, painful is a way of speaking. It wasn't that painful, was it, guys? Now it's when you go, no, this is on the World Wide Web. No, loved every minute. So price skimming. Apple does this, and this comes from, there's a glass, and it's full, and this is the foam that is on top, right? What does Apple? The Apple 11 is $1,300. I brought myself to say it. This is $1,300 for a phone, and actually the previous one was $1,300. I have a friend that bought it. It was $1,300. So, what do? You want that phone, $1,300, and there's some people, some early adopters, as we were saying before. My friend Mitch will buy it. I'm sure he already has it, and they sell it to whomever wants to buy it for $1,300. And then what will happen? Then they'll go, okay, now you can have it for $900. But you know why? Because if you want the iPhone 12, that's now $1,400. And that way, and then when the next one comes along, okay, now you can have it for $600. And before you know it, you can have it. It's past 4 or 5 years, people that are paying that amount. That's called price skimming. This is a great pricing strategy, but it requires one thing, innovation. You need to come up with the next thing. Apple was great at that. You remember the tablets we all had before the iPad? They created a market. There were some devices that were the original tablets, but they essentially created that market. How about something called freemium? For example, you guys know Wall Street Journal, for example, or many other magazines, digital magazines? You want to see some stuff, that's fine. That's for free. Oh, you want the real stuff? Now you pay a premium. That's freemium. So pricing, as I said, there's 25 that you guys will get to see soon enough. They'll be on the final. Just saying. Bundling. Bundling is very useful when you're going to get rid of certain inventories, right? And there's something called price discrimination. Price discrimination essentially is let's pay for the same product, the same time, different people pay different prices. That could be based on elasticity. For example, when you guys go to buy a car and they're negotiating with you, my tip to you, to the males in the room, don't shave, dirty hair, dirty clothes, dirty shoes. That's 10 grand off the car, right there. But that's a negotiation where they're trying to figure out your reservation price. How much is the maximum you're willing to pay? And then the next person comes along and they pay maybe a different price for exactly the same good. You could be volume discounts, right? If you buy from 0 to 100, so much, 100 to 200, or based on a whole customer segment elasticity. Have you guys ever wondered why, if I go with my mom and one of my sons to the movies, we pay 3 different prices? Same movie. Same movie. My mom would pay the senior. I'm called full fare, funnily enough, because I pay the full fare. And then my son, if he's a student, will pay a different price. So there's a lot of stuff we can do with pricing, right? And that's the first one of our 7 tools. Second one, we've mentioned it ad nauseum. And by the way, these tools, you all know them, sort of. You just don't know you know them, but they're there. And this is just a list, a compilation that has proven to be effective. I cannot say this enough. If you bring this list with you, you'll have a drop the mic moment. When you're in the room talking and they're saying, what can we do? You go down the list, 1, 2, 3, and then you drop the mic and you leave the room. Don't do that, please. If it's the CEO, don't do that. Not advisable. So second, we've been talking a lot about advertising, right? This one here, depending what we're doing, will be moving along the demand, right? Everything else is a demand shifter. Remember, our first job here was to push that demand out. So advertising. How about, we mentioned packaging. I always tell this story, I told you guys the other day. I was living in England in a previous life, and there was this John Lennon CD. Those were the days of the CDs. I was going to say cassette, tape, but you show my age a little bit too much. So a CD, John Lennon. And John Lennon looked so sad on that CD. He was there on the piano looking like, yeah, I'm not in the Beatles any longer. So he was there, and I didn't buy the CD. Following weekend, I go by, there was this brand new John Lennon CD. He had a white cover with his picture, the hair was in the air, he was happy, he was playing. I said, I don't have this one, I'll buy it. I get home, I pull the white thing, and there's John looking at me. They changed packaging. They changed the attributes of the product. Sounds silly, but they changed the attributes. Look, I get chills, they're multiplying. I did buy the CD. It was a great CD, but I would have never purchased it because the attributes of the product and packaging is one of them. It just wasn't appealing to me. But this also goes, well, that functionality on this phone, on that, whatever it is they're selling, through your market research, you figure out what can we change. So we're talking about attributes. Now we mentioned loss leading strategy. That's when you have two goods, right? There's two types of goods. You have complement goods. There's three actually: complement, substitute, and independent. And with complement goods, there's something very interesting that you can do. And the rationale behind printers and toners. We're reading an article the other day where now HP, they're actually going to sell printers that can be used with just HP toners, and it's going to be cheaper, or it's unlocked and you can use it with any toner, but it's going to be more expensive. Or like phones and data plan. Why can you get, I believe in Singapore it's still the case, you can get an iPhone subsidized, and maybe you only pay $200. But you better sign here for the 2 years data plan. What are they doing? I reduce the price of the phone in this case, for example, so I can get more phones out. That's the law of demand, right? If I sell something cheaper, ceteris paribus, I'll sell more. And if I sell more phones on that pricing scheme, what's going to happen? But I sell a lot of more contracts, a lot more data. I didn't touch the price of the data, per se, and I got much more out. These two are complement goods, those two. And if I reduce the price of a complement good, I can get a ton more sales without having to sell this one cheaper. Kindle is another example we were talking about. Now, there's another type of goods. There are the substitute goods. Also, substitute goods, you purchase one or the other. So the guy that was in my class years ago, when he went to the BMW dealership, with a new BMW and a certified pre-owned, he'll do one or the other, right? Those are substitutes, new and used. Or most of you in your companies will have several versions of the product line. You may have the OK, the good, and the OMG. Oh my God. You play with prices of these three because maybe dollars are coming from the good. Play with prices of the other two to sell more of the good. You can make this one more expensive, and whomever is willing to buy it, you'll get a ton of cash for it. But you don't want to make, you want to make this look like a bargain. So you can increase the price of the substitute good. If I sell the new cars that we're talking about, if now the BMW, the new one, instead of 50 grand, is 60 grand, that 35,000 certified pre-owned is starting to look like a bargain, starting to look like good. So we've talked about pricing, advertising, attributes, reduce the price of a complement good, increase the price of a substitute. And now we get into one that is most interesting, which is, why don't we find more people to sell this? Expand the customer base. Let's see how we do that, and how some companies did that. You remember the days when an Armani shirt was 250 bucks? It was an Armani shirt. Not everybody could buy an Armani shirt. And then fast fashion came along. Zara, Spanish company, by the way, Zara, H&M, Uniqlo, there's several from several countries. And now you could get a very nice shirt for $55. What did Armani do? Did they reduce the price to dilute the brand? No, they came up with Armani Exchange. Oh, you want an Armani shirt? That's fine, it's still 250 bucks. And I mean, you'll know this better than me, but Armani has Armani Collezioni, Armani whatever. You have all the different customer segmentation, different levels. And you want a shirt that is good, an Armani shirt still, an exchange for 75 bucks? Okay. And now you're competing with those companies that got into your turf without diluting the brand. So you can create a new brand. We talked about getting into China, getting into India. You're selling your product successfully somewhere, try to sell it successfully somewhere else. But that, I advise you, do your research. There's some famous examples of car names that have been launched in different countries that were a disaster. I was born and raised in Spain. There's one that comes to mind in Spain, but it's a rude word that I will not repeat here. But literally, people were driving a car with something written in the back that if you were called that, you would be offended. So do your research, will you? Once we're off mic, I'll tell you the name and all the story. My best behavior here. So you can get into new markets or geographies, right? E-commerce. Why are people selling online? What's the big deal? Why do you buy online? Why don't you go to the shop? It's convenience. It's easy. You do it from home, right? Is it easier for the company that is selling to? You can have a distribution center. You can centralize those things. There's a ton of stuff, a ton of overhead that you take out. In the US, not long ago, Samsung, in Best Buy, which is a retailer that sells electronics and TVs and whatnot, you could find a Samsung shop inside. What are they trying to do? Expand their customer base, reach more customers. So whether you're going online or offline, if you increase or review your distribution channels, why can you buy chewing gum at a gas station? That's a way for chewing gum companies to reach more customers, right? Distribution channels. What else? I'm looking at you people now. You took the exam on Tuesday. What else? New brand, new markets, distribution channels. That's number 7. We have one missing here. Emilio? Product line, very good. 5% of the grade. I haven't graded your exam yet, Hans, but 5%. Product line, review or expand your product line. You know, you remember when Apple, since we were talking about Apple, you remember when they launched the iPhone, the 5C or 5S, that was kind of plasticky? And now they're thinking about launching another one that is low price. Why are they doing that? Why is Apple launching a low-cost phone? That it doesn't have every single one of the attributes of the real iPhone, but there's a ton of that are willing to pay a low price for something that kind of meets their need. It's not this one, but they can pay that anyway. So they're reviewing their product line to try to get more customers, and that also gives them a chance to play with price substitute goods. So product line, very good. And last but not least, you can try to influence standards or regulations. If your product becomes a standard, you're going to enjoy a ton of sales for a while. If it becomes a standard to the point that that's what's written in public tenders, for example, a valve needs to withdraw so much pressure because these guys just created a valve, and now we want everybody to do that. So what you have here is a comprehensive list. Pricing, advertising, attributes, reduce the price of a complement good, increase the price of a substitute good, or expand the customer base, brand, new markets, review distribution channels, your product line, or try to influence standards and regulations. What this list will give you is a comprehensive way of tackling or building a sales strategy. If you, for your industry, for your product, your service, now start thinking, what are we doing? We try this. Maybe the answer is everything right. But I urge you, or I would suggest, strongly suggest, let's just put it that way, take the time to go one, figure out what strategy we have behind that. Because when you do that, you'll be able to then frame it back here, which is where we started. Profit is revenue minus cost. We're trying to shift that demand out to put that out. Then, of course, most of these, they come with a cost that is associated, or not. But that's the way I suggest that you use microeconomics to build a successful sales strategy. Thank you very much. I'll take any questions before I drop the mic. Yes? No? Questions from anybody? Sure. No, it's just so they hear you. Yes.
So I can understand. So what about like for social enterprise? Because it's not that it's not for profit. It's not solely for profit. And if it's a social enterprise, how would that ranking be different from that 1 to 7?
It would definitely. Oh, these are not ranked in order of importance, and these are not mutually exclusive. This doesn't mean that you either do 1 or 2 or 3. No. So whatever you do, you better tell the world about it. Okay? So these are not mutually exclusive. When we're talking about social enterprise, it's slightly different, right? Because you're not pursuing this profit. That's not what you're going for. You're trying to get to as many people as possible, to help as many people as possible. But you can think of how you expand your customer base, right? Where are we helping people? Who are we helping? Is there anybody else that we can reach with our resources? How are we getting to them? How people get to know us? What it is that we're helping with? Because maybe we're targeted on this is what we're helping people with, and we realize there's a market need that is greater. Market need not in terms of profitability, but people may need something adjacent or whatever that may be. But this list is mostly built to drive profitability. Yes, Rohit.
I think surprise often, when for certain goods or services there's an information asymmetry, price signals
Yep.
quality. So instead of, with prices getting higher instead of demand falling, sometimes it can have reverse effect, especially when you're talking about luxury market.
Yes. So then we get into the conversation of luxury goods or normal goods,
Yeah.
inferior goods, etc., etc.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'll let you finish.
Yeah, and then there are some, like you rightly said about packaging. So there are some trials which have been done about wines in particular, where the same wines in different kind of packaging and different kind of bottles can be sold at widely different prices.
It's not the bottle. How you call the label.
Labeling.
The label in wine makes a ton of difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You mentioned price as a signal. You're totally correct. I always use the same example. I don't have a garden, and when we used to have a garden, that was the community that mowed the garden. I've never in my life purchased a lawnmower, ever. So if I went to purchase one tomorrow and I walked into the store, my thinking could be, and these numbers are purely invented, I truly don't know how much it goes for. 500 bucks? I'm going to spend 500 bucks on it. 100 bucks? Can't be that good. If I'm going to be back in two days because it broke, 300 bucks. Well, I think it's a lot of money for a lawnmower, but it's not 500 bucks, and it's not a cheap one. Okay, I'll take that one.
Yeah.
So price is absolutely a signal.
Yeah.
That's also why when we're mentioning, for example, penetration pricing, there you're trying to get into the market. So the signal that you don't want people worrying about the price at that point. That's not the conversation. That's why sometimes our samples, hey, try this. Try it for free for whatever time it is, and then we'll talk.
Yeah. On the product line, because I worked as the marketing manager in automotive early in my career, and what the industry does very well is that they would have some products which are purely decoy kind of products, and there's
Such as, give us some example. Come on, tell us.
for example,
Give us the inside look.
for example,
Don't push that button. It doesn't do anything. You're there.
not just features, but for example, if I won't name the company, but you go to buy a very popular car in India, and you read the product literature, and they would have like the 4 or 5 variants of that car,
Yeah.
and the top variant would be loaded with everything, okay, and the dealer would never have inventory for that car. It would be just there for display,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be priced quite a lot higher. The price difference won't make sense in your mind. And so what you tend to do as a customer is that you go and buy the second highest. And in the natural course, you may not need the second highest at all. You would have bought the middle variant, the third variant.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
because now you have a point of reference, which is the highest,
Exactly.
and so you end up buying buying
Exactly.
the second highest, and those variants are never produced, and they're not sold because no rational person is going to buy them but they're used as a decoy to set an anchor point or a point of reference in the minds of customers.
There's a ton of research done in pricing. Thank you, Rohit, for that. With stuff that seems so simple. For example, there's a pricing strategy called psychology pricing, which is, it's been scientifically demonstrated, anything that finishes on 99 sells more than any other numbers. Because a TV that is 999 bucks with 99 cents is not even 1,000 bucks, right? That's what your brain goes. It goes, it's not even 1,000 bucks. We need to get it. And there's been research done that stuff that was sold at, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was something like 199 or 149, something like that. This one sold more. There's a whole business built upon this. The dollar stores are just built upon, it's not even a buck. It's not even $1. So all these pricing strategies also, they are not mutually exclusive. These are more tools on your tool belt now to mix and match to get where you want to get. Very good comment. Be kind, Emilio.
I will. I'm too tired. When you enter with a new product in the market, so something where you don't have any reference, so you cannot set a demand curve, and how do you set your price? And the same thing if you go with a product that is well known, but in a market which has no experience about that product.
So
like Africa,
that's the most difficult thing to do, pricing a new product. There's several ways of doing it. One way is the amount of money that we price in this, what could people do with that money? So there's not a comparison, but if we ask somebody to buy a phone, let's say that the iPhone was the first smartphone that came out. It was, kind of. And let's say that the pricing point, I don't remember how much it cost the first iPhone. Was it $799, $799, the first one? The very first one. I don't know how much it was, but what could you do with that amount of money? That's one of the things that come in mind. What can I do if I'm going to pay 300 bucks for this thing that none of us needed before, and now we all need, that was a necessity, we totally need that phone. What could I do with those 300 bucks? That's one way of pricing it. You have several other ways. You can do the cost plus. That you're not taking into account the customer as much. That what you're doing is, it cost me 100, and I want to make 20% on it, I'm going to price it 120. That to me is not the right way to go about it, because you don't know if customers are willing to pay 120, maybe they're willing to pay 140. You just never asked. So in pricing products, what I always suggest, what I think it works for new products, is customer groups, research in that sense. Put in even if it's not the full finished product yet, if it's a prototype, just gather feedback. Who's the customer we're going for? Let's get a ton of people that fit that requirement. Let's get them to see the product, to explain the value of it. How much will you price it? And you'll be shocked, the results, because sometimes companies go wrong by saying 120, and then they could have charged 160. But they never asked. And the issue is that now if I'm charging 120, that's it. I anchor. That's the signal that I send to the market. This costs 120. And if you're the first one to, you're going to catch early adopters. That's nature. They are willing, by definition, to pay a higher price, but it's very few of them. So what you could do is I catch the early adopters first, and then I go down. Or what product, what service, what industry, and whatnot. You can do the penetration price, and you can say, let's get in low for a limited time only. Or try this, test this. We'll talk about the price later. But that, Emilio, that's one of the toughest things to do, because pricing corrections later on are difficult. Okay, we're going to raise prices now. No, this is 120 now. Well, let's expand. Let's change the attributes of the product. Now it's much better. Is it 40 better? Is the customer going to see as all the stuff that you put in now is worth it 160? That's the key. Okay, I think we're good for time. I want to thank you for your time and your questions. It's great to be back at Rutgers here in Asia Pac, and you have my contact details, so please do reach out if you have any more questions. Thank you, guys.